bleeding purple and gold. From the heart of Los Angeles, this is the LakersNation.com podcast with your host, Trevor Lane.
Welcome to today's show. As always, we are powered by CLNS Media. Today's show is brought to you by NatureBox. Go to naturebox.com/Lakers for a fantastic snacking experience with high quality, well-made snacks. And we're also brought to you by Casper. Go to casper.com/Lonzo2 for a tremendous mattress that will give you the best night's sleep ever. Now, on today's show, we have a ton to talk about. I've got Alex Kennedy from Hoops Hype on. We're going to talk about all these crazy things going on with Kyrie Irving and his trade demand from the Cavaliers, how that impacts the Lakers, what things are looking like with Paul George potentially coming to LA next summer. Even though it is the end of July, we still have a ton to go over. So let's jump right into it. Don't forget, go to iTunes and make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to our show. Alex, thanks so much for joining us. Despite having lost your voice, you are toughing it out.
Thank you for having me. Hopefully it doesn't get worse throughout the podcast. Right now I'm hanging on and a little bit hoarse, but we'll see if it goes away completely over the next half hour here.
Well, thanks for being a trooper and hanging in there with us. Now, this NBA offseason has been incredible. I mean, it's been, for Lakers fans, it's been awesome because we've been watching Lonzo Ball and Kyle Kuzma tear up Summer League and everything. But just in general, across the league, it's been one story after another. And just when things looked like they were going to start slowing down and everyone could kind of exhale and we'd hit that slow point of the season, boom, Kyrie Irving trade demand. Alex, what is going on here?
Well, yeah, this summer has been crazy. I was just looking at it the other day, all the different all-stars that have changed teams in the last month. When you talk about, Chris Paul, Gordon Hayward, Paul Millsap, Jimmy Butler, Paul George, it's been pretty crazy. And then, like you said, just when it seemed things were slowing down, you have Carmelo Anthony kind of coming back up in trade rumors, and now Kyrie Irving, who I don't think anyone saw coming. I don't think anyone saw this coming. When I was in Las Vegas talking to different executives, I was asking, who's the next player that could be available, the next star that could be available, and no one said Kyrie Irving. I think, there were some people that thought maybe down the road he could be unhappy or Cleveland could look to make a move, but in terms of it happening, this quickly and then looking to move him right now, it's a big shock. But, now we're kind of hearing more reports about why he's unhappy. He didn't like being the second option. There's obviously the 7-year age gap between Kyrie and LeBron, and there was some fear that if LeBron were to leave, then Kyrie would kind of be left over with this roster that's no longer a contender. And Kyrie wants to go lead a team of his own, and he hasn't really gotten a chance to do that since he, started nearing his prime. So it definitely is interesting. There's never really a boring time in the NBA offseason, and now we'll see what happens. I think we could very well see a trade because whenever a guy makes a demand like that, it's just going to get more awkward as the season goes on. You kind of lose leverage a little bit the longer you hold on to him, and so we could see a Kyrie Irving trade very soon.
So you think this could really happen where Kyrie Irving could get traded here? Now, the interesting thing, though, is that Kyrie Irving, unlike a guy like, say, Paul George, is actually under contract for a couple more seasons, and then he's got a player option. So he's 2 more seasons, next season and the one after, and then a player option after that. So the Cavs they know that even though Kyrie Irving has said, hey, I want to go to one of 4 places. I want to go to San Antonio, Minnesota, Miami, or New York, which are some interesting picks, and that's a whole other discussion. But Kyrie has 2 years at least under contract, so any team trading for him knows that you get at least 2 years with him, even if you're not one of his preferred destinations. So I would have to imagine that the Cavs will get a at least decent return compared to what, say, like Indiana got for Paul George, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Kyrie doesn't really have a whole lot of leverage here in terms of his contract. It's not like he can say, okay, well, if you trade me there, I'm not going to re-sign with this team because, like you said, he has 2 years left. So, teams that may be scared to go after a guy on a 1-year rental, suddenly if you get 2 years of Kyrie Irving, it may make sense to go after him. And I think you're going to see more teams than those 4 really show significant interest in Kyrie. Teams like Milwaukee and Denver, Phoenix, teams that want to make that next step and become a playoff team. and make a splashy move. Those are kind of teams that have been making calls whenever stars have become available in recent years, whenever stars have been disgruntled. So I think those teams could be in the mix as well. The thing is, he doesn't have leverage with his contract, but they obviously want to keep LeBron happy. Everything that the Cavs have done is about keeping LeBron happy, making sure that he's going to stay. So if you keep Kyrie Irving around and he's openly saying, I don't want to be here, I don't want to play with LeBron, I'm not staying long term, that's where it becomes difficult, and you almost have to move him just because of the awkwardness and the tension and everything going on behind the scenes. But in terms of his contract, yeah, I mean, they can't afford to wait if they want to. Maybe they feel like offers would improve. I don't necessarily see that happening, but yeah, I mean, the contract situation shouldn't scare any teams off.
So let's say that they do end up moving Kyrie, because I agree with you. I think that it's a bad situation, and you need to kind of move on, especially if you've got a team that wants to contend for a championship. You don't need a guy who is being a negative presence because he doesn't want to be there. You want players that want to be there and are going to buy into everything that Coach Ty Lue is saying. So if they do go ahead and move him, now, regardless of I guess not necessarily regardless, but they'll get some kind of a return, and there's a decent chance that maybe they don't get back a point guard in that scenario. And this is where this Kyrie Irving thing may impact the Los Angeles Lakers, because the Lakers and Cleveland Cavaliers are the two teams that are rumored to be in the running to land free agent point guard Derrick Rose. So if Kyrie moves out, Alex, does Derrick Rose just slot right into that starting point guard slot in Cleveland?
Yeah, it's very possible. I think Derrick wants to be a starter. Right now, he's looking at situations where he can step in, potentially have a big year, and then next summer get the lucrative payday that he's looking for. Obviously, if he has a chance to step in and be a starter in Cleveland and have all those weapons around him and get all the exposure that comes from being the starter on a team like that, then that's huge for him. Whereas, if he goes to LA, he's splitting time with Lonzo Ball. Yeah, it's a big stage. There's a lot of exposure, but it's not the same as being on, one of the top teams in the NBA as a starter, playing with LeBron James and Kevin Love and, whoever Cleveland can get back from the Kyrie Irving deal. So I think, Derrick had been talking about making a decision this weekend, and he was looking at, the Cavs, the Lakers, and the Bulls, apparently. That was out there, too.
Right.
Now I think we're probably going to see him take a step back and wait a little bit and see how this thing plays out. If there's a move that's coming pretty soon, I'd imagine he'd want to, wait to see what happens. If they tell him, look, we're not going to trade Kyrie for a while, then, he has to obviously go and make a decision and figure out what's best for him. But even still, even if they don't make a move for a while, the uncertainty surrounding Kyrie and his future, I mean, it definitely makes Cleveland more attractive, in my opinion, for Derrick Rose, because there's a real chance to play and be a significant difference maker.
Absolutely. When the rumor broke, my first reaction was, oh, this totally makes sense, because it was just a few hours earlier that I think it was Chris Haynes of ESPN reported that Derrick Rose's decision now wasn't going to come for probably another week or so instead of this weekend like we had heard. So, I mean, obviously Derrick Rose is waiting on Cleveland to see what happens there. Now, if Kyrie was staying, then the decision pretty much comes down to more money and more minutes in LA, even though you're probably a backup behind Lonzo, because, Magic has said Lonzo's the face of the franchise and all that. Or you go to Cleveland and you're a backup behind Kyrie, less minutes, less money, but you're on a winning team. Well, if that whole equation changes and suddenly there's a starting spot open in Cleveland, then I just don't see how Derrick Rose turns that down. So, I mean, regardless, I've seen a lot of fans on Twitter saying that they don't think Derrick Rose is a great fit for the Lakers and they don't like him as a player and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But fit and everything aside, I think that if Kyrie ends up being traded and the Cavs need a point guard, it seems like Derrick Rose makes a ton of sense for them just based on talent and what's out there. Now, you were tweeting this morning about this awesome ESPN story that came out, and it was actually written by three people who contributed to it: Ramona Shelburne, Dave McMenamin, and Brian Windhorst, and Zach Lowe also chipped in as well. And they revealed some interesting tidbits about a move the Cavs tried to make before the draft, and then also after the draft. They were looking at making a trade to land Paul George, and it could have a pretty big impact on the Lakers. I was completely amazed by the package that didn't get done that Indiana would have received. I think you had the same reaction, right?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a really good package for Indiana. Basically, the deal would have been a three-team deal where Cleveland got Paul George, Denver got Kevin Love, and Indiana got back Gary Harris and some other pieces. And I think in the article I mentioned they were going to get back several first-round picks too. So
Yeah.
I was surprised that, basically in the article they reported that the deal was agreed upon. The Cavs were celebrating, and then Kevin Pritchard, the GM of the Pacers, texted and backed out of the deal at the last second, and then turned around and made the Oklahoma City trade. So, that's really interesting. I didn't realize it was ever that close to where you almost had Paul George, on the phone with Dan Gilbert. You had a deal that was agreed upon. Usually when it gets to that point and you have a framework of a deal and all sides have agreed on it, it's rare for that to kind of fall apart. So it was interesting to hear that side of things. It really changes the way you kind of view this whole Cavs situation, because you go from, an offseason where they really have had nothing but losses. The Kyrie Irving situation, moving on from David Griffin and not being able to replace him with Chauncey Billups or someone else, missing out on Jimmy Butler and then Paul George. This is a very different offseason if that deal goes through. So it was interesting to kind of see the behind the scenes of what took place during those conversations.
Yeah, if you always have to wonder, and I guess next summer we'll kind of look back and wonder, what if. Now, Paul George is going to be a free agent next summer, and of course we know the Los Angeles Lakers are going to be targeting him. I mean, they're gonna go after him and try to sign him in free agency, and right now it's trying to pry him away from Oklahoma City. And had that deal gone down, it would have been trying to pry him away from the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I don't really know that one is all that much better or worse. I mean, certainly the Cavs will contend for a championship, so maybe the Thunder have a little bit of a tougher go of it, but we'll have to wait and see on that. It's just something to consider, something to remember as we kind of head forward towards the Lakers' whole plan of landing a big free agent next summer, and what could have been with this Cavs team, where they could have had really Kyrie, LeBron, and Paul George, because they would have shipped out Kevin Love in that deal. Still amazed that Indiana didn't take that offer. I think at one point it was Gary Harris and the number 13 pick, which would have been incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, that ended up being Donovan Mitchell, who was tremendous in summer league.
Yeah.
I can't believe that they didn't go ahead and do that. But I guess hey, maybe they didn't want to trade him east or something like that.
I would say for the Lakers that this is a good thing, because I thought the fear for me, if I'm a Lakers fan, was that Paul George was going to go to Cleveland or Boston and win a ton of games and be on a contender. If he goes to Cleveland, he's playing with Kyrie Irving and LeBron James. I would be worried that he would fall in love with that situation, because he has so much talent around him and he's going to the finals likely. Whereas I think in Oklahoma City they're a very talented team, but it's hard for me to imagine them even going to the Western Conference Finals. They're really good on paper. Obviously, it's going to be fun watching Russell Westbrook and Paul George, but I look at that situation as being a 1-year thing for Paul George. Whereas I think Cleveland, if everything worked out and went as planned, you could almost imagine him falling in love with that situation and having a harder time walking away. So if I'm the Lakers, I'm glad that deal didn't go through.
Yeah, that's certainly something that they have to be a bit thankful for, because of course we do know that they want to land that superstar, and that's Paul George, and that it's going to be something to watch for Lakers fans for this entire season. I mean, we're going to be kind of keeping our fingers crossed and hoping that things don't go too well in Oklahoma City, although I think with that much talent on one team, they're definitely going to have some success. Now, you and I were talking actually before we went on air, and you had some really intriguing stuff on Dwyane Wade, and there was a rumor that came out about a week or so ago that the Lakers were actually interested in pursuing Dwyane Wade before they did the Kentavious Caldwell-Pope deal. So before that came around, they were going after Dwyane Wade. What do you have on that? We're going to pause for just one moment to talk about Nature Box. Now, we all want to eat better, I certainly do, but when it comes to snacks, sometimes it feels like the whole world is delicious and a billion calories versus boring and tasteless. Those are your only options. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can up your snack game with Nature Box. Nature Box has over 100 snacks that taste good and are actually better for you. All snacks are made from high quality, simple ingredients, which means no artificial colors, flavors, or sweeteners. So you can feel good about what you're eating. My personal favorite is the vanilla bean wafers. I love those things, and their dark cocoa nom noms are my wife's absolute favorite. She loves the chocolate. because they satisfy snacking cravings in a way that chips simply don't. They just hit the spot. You're sure to find your new snack obsession at NatureBox. They add new snacks every month inspired by real customer feedback, the latest food trends, and professional chefs. It's so simple. Just go to naturebox.com, choose the snacks you want, and NatureBox will deliver them right to your door. And the best thing is there's no risk. If you ever try a snack you don't like, you don't have to eat it. NatureBox will replace it for free. Right now, you'll even save more because you're a Lakers Nation listener. Go to NatureBox and you will get 3 free snacks with your first order when you go to naturebox.com/Lakers. That's naturebox.com/Lakers, and you'll get 3 free snacks with your first order. Do it right now. That's naturebox.com/Lakers.
Yeah, well, basically, they made a call to Chicago about acquiring Dwyane Wade, and the idea was they were going to bring him in, and he would be a mentor for, the young guys, especially Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram. Magic Johnson has a lot of respect for Dwyane Wade and believes that, he could help build a culture there. And then the idea was not only would he be able to contribute this year and, mentor the young guys, but there was the idea that he would be there, for more than just 1 year. It would be more of a, multi-year deal. And then the idea was that having Dwyane Wade there would give the Lakers, a chance to potentially, lure LeBron James away from Cleveland. That, Dwyane and LeBron are still very close. It would make the Lakers more attractive to LeBron James. Ultimately, Chicago didn't make the deal. They didn't want to do it. I think the Lakers were ready to make that trade before the whole Kentavious Caldwell-Pope situation kind of unfolded. But the Bulls didn't want to make the deal. And in terms of buyout talks with Dwyane Wade, Wade has talked to the Bulls about a buyout. I know he was kind of blindsided by the Jimmy Butler trade. So they've had talks about a buyout, but the Bulls want him to leave a lot of money on the table. So I don't think that's going to happen, at least right now. Maybe later in the season they can come to an agreement whenever he's gotten, a big chunk of that paycheck already paid to him. But yeah, that was something that was definitely discussed. The Lakers' interest in Dwyane Wade was real, and it went beyond just having him for this season. It was about, potentially attracting LeBron James, because they definitely have their eyes on LeBron. I don't think it's any coincidence that you saw Rob Pelinka and Magic Johnson praising Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and his agent, Rich Paul, in that agency. I think they're doing a lot of things right now to put themselves in a position where they can be attractive for LeBron James. And now with the whole Kyrie Irving situation happening and, things being even more uncertain in Cleveland, that's another area where if you're a Lakers fan, you have to feel pretty good about where things stand, feel pretty optimistic. I think if you're looking at LeBron, you feel better about potentially landing him or at least getting a serious meeting with him today than you would have, a few weeks ago.
Well, let's dig into all this LeBron stuff in just a minute. I want to jump back to Dwyane Wade real quick. I'm curious, do you have any sense for what the Lakers offer to Chicago in exchange for Dwyane Wade would have consisted of that they turned down?
No, I do not. I was trying to figure that out. I have not been able to find out what the offer was. I don't think the talks even got to that point where they were really serious, because I think Chicago shut it down. They've been pretty adamant that they want Wade to be there, and that's why they're not willing to just give him a buyout or trade him away. I think they view him as kind of the same way that the Lakers do. They view him as a veteran mentor. They know that even if he's not in love with his situation, that he's going to be a professional. He's going to help the young guys. He's going to be a leader. So I'm not sure how far along the talks even got, but I do know that the Lakers definitely pursued Wade. They definitely made an offer, and the goal was to have him for this year and then potentially as a LeBron James recruiter.
That's really interesting, and that's when you look at Dwyane Wade and you consider him as a player, obviously he was a tremendous player, and he's still very good, and he can have his nights where he blows up. But obviously, as he gets older, those skills, that athleticism is going to wane a bit. Interesting fit next to a guy like Lonzo Ball, because Wade isn't known as the best three-point shooter out there. But still, I mean, you can see what the Lakers were thinking. If getting Wade is the move that ultimately lands you LeBron, then you probably go ahead and do it. Should Wade get bought out by the Bulls at some point, should we then assume that the Lakers would be one of the teams that would be interested in bringing him in, or did the KCP thing just completely blow that up?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say. I think if Wade gets bought out, he'll want to go to a contender for the rest
Right.
of the year. He's at the point in his career now where he wants to be on a, you know, contending team, and that's why I think the Jimmy Butler thing kind of surprised him, and he was kind of frustrated being, left over in Chicago and not having a chance to really contend this year or even be a playoff team probably. So I think there is some interest, and maybe he would be interested in going there if he's thinking beyond this year and thinking about maybe attracting a guy like LeBron James or some of his other buddies to LA. It is possible, but at the same time, if he gets bought out, he could go join a contender for the rest of the year and then still go join LA in the summer and do that same kind of thing. I think the Lakers would show interest and they would be interested in bringing him in for that same reason, but I'm not sure Dwyane would want to finish the season there whenever he could just play the season out somewhere else and then kick the tires down the road with the Lakers in July.
We're going to pause one more time here to talk about sleep. Now, as we are learning more and more about sports science, we are finding out just how important sleep is on the human body, not just for your mental and physical well-being, but also for your overall health. And our top athletes are learning that as well. The days when you would say, oh, I stayed up all night and I'm still fine and I'm ready to go, those are gone. And it isn't seen as a sign of toughness anymore, because now we know that mentally your brain does not work the same when you are not getting enough sleep. Physically, your muscles do not work the same when you are not getting enough sleep. So it's so important that you have the right bed to sleep on. And that's where Casper comes in. Casper offers American-made hybrid mattresses that are insanely comfortable. I just got mine and it is amazing. They're also affordable, and you get to try it for 100 nights risk-free in your own home. If you don't love it, they'll pick it up and refund you everything. There's no risk with Casper mattresses. They get shipped right to your door, and so you don't have to worry about anything at all. It's an awesome, awesome deal. Very cool the way the whole thing is set up. Like I said, I just got mine, and I totally love it. Highly recommend that you go to casper.com/Lonzo2. That's the special page set up just for Lakers Nation podcast listeners. And because you're a listener of this show, you actually get $50 off of your mattress, which is a tremendous deal. They're already very affordable. And then you get an extra $50 on top of it just because you listen to this show. So again, go to casper.com/Lonzo2. That's Lonzo, like Lonzo Ball, the fantastic new point guard of the Los Angeles Lakers. And then the number 2, which is Lonzo Ball's jersey number, as you all know. So again, casper.com/Lonzo2. Go there for the best night's sleep you've ever had. Well, the Lakers have some work cut out for them here, because even though Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka have made a number of moves, we know they traded D'Angelo Russell and Timofey Mozgov partially to free up some cap space for next summer. We know they want to chase after 2 superstars. They do still need to move off some contracts. Obviously, they'd love to move Luol Deng, but that's a tough one on that big deal. Maybe Jordan Clarkson, his name has been thrown out there a bit. But regardless of what they do in order to get there, still, the feeling is that LeBron is one of the players that they want to pursue. And of course, Paul George is probably the other guy. There's some other names that are out there as well, DeMarcus Cousins being one of them. I mean, Russell Westbrook could even hit the free agent market. So interestingly enough, Paul George, when he was introduced by the Oklahoma City Thunder, did say that the LA stuff was being overstated about how badly he wanted to be there, and that realistically it would have to be a situation where a few guys came in at the same time for him to go there. So maybe that's kind of a little hint towards the Lakers pursuing LeBron, or a nod towards that. So let's talk about that, because when the LeBron news first broke a few weeks ago, I rolled my eyes. I thought, here we go again. I just didn't see why the Lakers would be going after LeBron. Well, I could understand why the Lakers would, but why LeBron would be coming to the Lakers, it just didn't seem real. I mean, this is a rumor we've been hearing for years now that LeBron was going to come to LA. So, Alex, how real is this? It feels like it's picking up steam each week.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is real. I think there is some interest there from LeBron. Obviously, the Lakers would love to have him. There's interest from LeBron, I think, because he's at the point in his career now where he wants to win more rings, obviously, but he also has all these off-court endeavors that he's involved in, businesses. He has the Hollywood side of things where he's, working on TV shows and movies and stuff like that. So I think that's attractive to a guy like LeBron. And then also, being able to go team up with a guy like Paul George. I think if you're LeBron right now and you're looking at, the situation Cleveland's in where Kyrie Irving wants out, you have limited flexibility, and you look at this Warriors team that's just a juggernaut, I think you realize, okay, I need to go team up with, some other really talented players in order to make this happen and in order to be able to add to my ring total. So I think that's where the Paul George stuff comes in. I think, they're going to be very active. They're going to try to clear cap space. They're going to try to go after multiple guys. One thing I found interesting with that Paul George press conference, Scott Agnes, who's a really good reporter in Indiana, said that in all of his years covering Paul George, he had never heard Paul George refer to himself as a Lakers fan growing up. He said that he, loved LA. He was a hometown guy, obviously, and he always talked about being a Clippers fan. But then during the Oklahoma City press conference, he said that he grew up being a Lakers and Clippers fan. So I thought it was interesting hearing that shift a little bit. It's almost, planting the seed like, okay, whenever these guys want to go to a team, it's easier to make the excuse or easier to leave a team whenever you say, oh, I'm going home. I'm going to my favorite team when I was growing up. That was the first time he said the Lakers were his favorite team growing up, according to Scott. And he obviously has been around Paul George a ton throughout his whole career. So I thought it was interesting that he kind of made that change and started pivoting and changing the narrative a little bit there. So I found that interesting. I do think his comment about saying, I want to compete for championships, so it has to be multiple guys, is interesting as well, because I think everyone looks at that Lakers team and says, okay, can you get 2 stars and put them alongside this young group and have a championship window that's wide open? There were a number of things about the Paul George press conference and now with the whole Kyrie Irving situation and how it impacts LeBron that I think are really interesting for the Lakers. And so far, I think they're all good signs. Now the next step is, hopefully this season, if you're a Lakers fan, Lonzo Ball plays really, really well. Yeah. Brandon Ingram takes a big step forward. These young guys make the situation even more attractive so that not only are you able to sell them on the off-court opportunities and the chance to team up together in LA, you have pieces on the roster that are, that make it even more attractive. Kind of like when LeBron went back to Cleveland in the first place. Kyrie Irving made that attractive. They had the assets to trade for Kevin Love. They had a number of young guys that, it was clear that their championship window was pretty wide open. The Lakers, if their young guys can take that next step forward and, be competitive, then all of a sudden the situation looks even better.
Right, and we know, LeBron was there in person to see Lonzo Ball play during Summer League. I mean, he got an up-close look at him and everything. So if these Lakers players do really excel like we saw in the Summer League, I mean, the Summer League team won the Summer League championship, right, for the Las Vegas version of the Summer League. And if they can continue to play that well, then suddenly you've got more pieces there. I mean, if Lonzo Ball looks like a star, or maybe or at least a future star, right? Then if you're Paul George, if you're LeBron James, you're looking at the Lakers and going, okay, not only can I go there and join somebody else, if I'm LeBron, I can go join Paul George or vice versa. But now I've also got Lonzo. I've got a point guard who is going to move the ball, who's going to put the ball in my hands in the right spot and is going to maximize my talents. So I think the Lakers do become, like you said, a much more attractive destination if some of their young players do step up. So it's going to be really crucial for the Lakers this next season that their young players play well, that they develop a good situation, and also that some of these other situations around the league kind of turn sour, that things don't go so well in Cleveland and things don't go so well in Oklahoma City. I mean, you hate to say you're rooting for another franchise to not have success, but that's kind of the world that we're living in right now, where the Lakers kind of have to hope that the Cavaliers don't have a wonderful season and that the Thunder don't have a wonderful season either, right?
Yeah, I mean, the worst case scenario is that, for the Lakers is that, Cleveland figures everything out and all the drama goes away and they're super competitive. Paul George loves Oklahoma City and wants to stay there. That would be a bad scenario, obviously, for the Lakers. But can I just say how different this conversation is from the one we were having a few months ago when it looked like the Lakers weren't going to have a draft pick and they still had Mozgov's contract on the books, and we were wondering if they'd have to trade away multiple pieces to have a shot at landing a guy like Paul George and not have Alonzo Ball, not have a first round pick at all, because it looked like they were going to fall outside the lottery or fall outside their protected pick range. this conversation is so different. I think if you go back and listen to our podcast for a few months ago and compare it to now, you have to love where you're at if you're the Lakers, if you're a Lakers fan.
Absolutely. I'm actually working on a piece right now for LakersNation.com about just that, about how since Magic Johnson came in, things have really gone the Lakers' way. I mean, from the draft lottery to the selections that they made to what's happened in free agency. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope just fell into their laps. It feels like the wind is starting to change and the Lakers are getting something going again. And I can't say that's all Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka. I mean, they certainly deserve some credit, but there has been a bit of good luck there as well. But I mean, at this point, it's hard to argue with the results. And if they keep having success like this, then we're going to have to start really saying, man, they have really done a tremendous job with turning this Lakers team around. Still a long ways to go, but yeah, man, like you said, you got to be happy with where things are at right now compared to where they were, say, 5-6 months ago.
Especially because I don't think anyone saw them turning things around this quickly. The idea was, okay, free up cap space, start kind of laying the groundwork, and then really everyone thought Magic and Rob would thrive whenever it did come time to meet with these veteran free agents in the future. Whenever you are pursuing the guys like Paul George and Russell Westbrook and LeBron James, to be able to go and land Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and be able to draft Lonzo Ball and be able to make some of these trades they've made. I love the Brook Lopez trade. The different things that they've done so far. I've been really impressed. I didn't think they'd be able to make this big of an impact right away, but so far, it seems like they're doing a great job. From everything I've heard from players and, agents and other executives, people love dealing with them. They have a great reputation already around the NBA. There's a lot to like if you're a Lakers fan.
Yeah, you mentioned that Brook Lopez trade, and there were a lot of Lakers fans that were upset about that, particularly online Lakers fans on like Twitter that were not pleased to see D'Angelo Russell go out in a deal to dump Timofey Mozgov's contract. They felt like the return for Russell was kind of lessened because you attached him to Mozgov, which is certainly true. But then they used that pick, the 27th pick, to land Kyle Kuzma, who ended up being the MVP of the championship game in Summer League and looked tremendous. I mean, some people will say, yeah, hey, they could have used the 28th pick on Kyle Kuzma, so it's not like they had to trade Russell in order to get him. But still, I mean, the trade essentially breaks down to Kuzma and Brook Lopez for Russell and Mozgov, which, that was kind of the one sticking point that people had with Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka. And Kuzma's play in Summer League at least somewhat erases that narrative. I mean, now you're looking at a pretty solid trade, especially since, I've been saying this for a while. Brook Lopez is a damn good basketball player, right? I mean, this Lakers starting five that you have right now with Brook Lopez in there is probably better than last year's team with D'Angelo Russell. I mean, well, especially now that they've added Caldwell-Pope. This is I don't want to say that they're a playoff team or anything like that, but I think that this starting five the Lakers have right now is better than any they've had in at least the last few years.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think Brook Lopez is really underrated. I think he's a very good player, and he's an amazing locker room guy too. He's a guy that, you talk to guys that have played with him, and his former teammates, they just love him. He's a great guy to have around a young team. I think he's going to do wonders in the locker room there. And I will say this too. I think there was a lot of things that happened with D'Angelo Russell that didn't go public and get out. We kind of heard Magic Johnson hint at that a little bit when he said that he needed a leader. But from what I've heard, there were more things. Obviously the Nick Young thing got out, and that was a big thing that made headlines. But I think there were a lot more instances of D'Angelo Russell being immature and having some issues with teammates or, different issues behind the scenes that didn't get out. And I think that contributed to the deal as well. So it's always tough whenever you're weighing a trade and looking at something like that, because you're wondering, okay, you can look at it on paper, but you don't really see everything that happens behind the scenes and what else went into that decision. I think there was a lot of things that didn't get out about D'Angelo Russell, and that made the Lakers, more willing to move on from him. And then the fact that you bring in Brook Lopez, who, again, like you said, great player and a great guy to have in the locker room, very mature. You don't have to worry about that off-court stuff. And then, the Kuzma pick definitely makes it more attractive, too. Kuzma looks really good, and I think he could be a potential steal for the Lakers. I like the trade. You dump Mozgov, you get rid of some of the drama or immaturity that was kind of taking place behind the scenes with Russell. Obviously you replaced him at point guard with Lonzo Ball, so there's not really a big drop off there. And then you get a really good center and really good locker room guy in Lopez and a young guy in Kuzma. So, I don't have any problem with that deal at all.
Yeah, it's obvious the Lakers are going for floor spacing, and so you can see, I mean, just based on their draft picks with Thomas Bryant and Kuzma and Josh Hart and guys like that, that they want to spread the floor for Lonzo Ball, and Brook Lopez fits perfectly in that. So it's going to be interesting to see the Lakers set up offensively next season. I think it's going to be a prettier brand of basketball that we're going to see. Things should look better, look a little bit more natural in terms of flow out there on the floor. Now, one thing that you mentioned was the KCP deal and everything, and I just want to check in with you and see if you had anything on how that came about, because from an outside perspective, the KCP situation seemed like one where as soon as Otto Porter got matched by the Washington Wizards, the Brooklyn Nets seemed poised to throw a multi-year deal at Caldwell Pope, which, I mean, it seems like it would have beat out the Lakers' offer, but yet Caldwell Pope decided to go with a 1-year, $18 million deal with the Lakers. Do you know, was Brooklyn really interested in him like we heard, or did that offer just never materialize, or was there a reason why maybe he picked the Lakers over the Nets? Reporters tried to get that out of KCP at the press conference, and he's a man of few words. I can say that for sure.
Yeah, he is. He is a man of few words. That's a good way of putting it. I think that Brooklyn's interest was a little bit overstated. I think Caldwell Pope kind of found himself in a tough position, obviously, after Detroit got Avery Bradley, and it happened so late that, he was kind of out of options. And I think he kind of found himself in a position where, we mentioned with Derrick Rose how he's going to go into a situation, sign a 1-year deal, and then try to cash in and sign a big long-term lucrative deal next summer. That's kind of the position that KCP is in. Obviously, he got way more money. Derrick Rose is going to sign for much less. But, in terms of signing a 1-year deal and going to the situation where you feel like you can thrive and kind of bet on yourself, that's kind of what he's looking to do. I think, he felt like if you were to go to LA, he could really fit in that system. He could play well. He could thrive. If you do well in Los Angeles, you have a ton of exposure. You're on a national stage. It's an easy way to, basically springboard yourself into that next big payday and show what you can do on a big platform. Whereas in Brooklyn, I'm not sure that's the case. I don't know if they were as interested. I don't know if they were willing to offer as much money as he wanted to in a multi-year deal. I'm not sure if they made an offer at all. I really don't know. But I think he looked at the LA situation, saw it as an opportunity to, potentially stay long-term in LA if it really works out and they can make him an offer. But, at the very least, a chance to really showcase his game and hope that next summer free agency goes, better and goes as planned for him, because, this was really kind of the worst case scenario for him after he turned down that big extension. And there goes my voice, by the way, getting much worse now. Yeah, after turning down the extension, and I want to say it was 4 years, $80 million from Detroit. I think he wanted to lock in, as much guaranteed money as he could for this summer, and then bet on himself and hope that next year bigger offers come his way.
Right. Yeah, that was that does seem to be his path going forward, and you got to hope that he manages to do it. I mean, I think he's going to be a great fit with Lonzo Ball, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch the Lakers this season. Well, Alex, let's save your voice here. I know you've got a lot more to do today. So hey, man, we really appreciate you coming on here and toughing one out. I know it's always tough when you're losing your voice and you're trying to do a podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. Sorry to everyone having to put up with my voice and hear this. Thanks for having me, man, and we'll do it again soon.
Awesome. That sounds great. And everybody, once again, that's Alex Kennedy at Hoops Hype. Make sure you find Alex on Twitter. He's an awesome follow, and read all of his work over at Hoops Hype. That's going to wrap things up for today. We will be back next week with another episode. Once again, my name is Trevor Lane, and this has been the Lakers Nation Podcast.